Hello everybody and welcome back to the ADD workshop. Today I'm taking apart this hyper tough recip saw from Walmart. It was I think $40 after everything was said and done, and I actually got it because I was very curious to know, for one, how they're making it so cheap, but also pretty much compare it to a higher end recip saw similar to the rigid that I took apart in my previous video. Um, so I went ahead and bought this. Wanted to give it a shot, take it apart, see how they made this, and I did try it out just a little bit. It'll bog down very easily. Um, it's not a wonderful saw. You could kill the battery in, I would imagine, 10 minutes. It only comes with an amp and a half hour battery, I believe. And yeah, well, anyway, so this is a saw right here, and it's actually very small. Didn't realize how small it was until I got it out of the box and used it a little bit. Comparative to, say, the rigid that I do have, it's a puny little guy. But anyway, it comes with a carrying bag and battery and a dinky little charger, and it also has a little wood blade in here with it that it's just a cheap wood blade, just so you can start cutting stuff right out of the box, I suppose. Anyway, got a little amp and a half hour battery here. I stuck this thing on the charger, and it took it probably good 6 hours to charge this little amp and a half hour battery. And when I started looking at the specs on it, yeah, this thing puts out 450 milliamps, which is less than half an amp at 20 volts. So yeah, that's about 4 hours of charging from dead, but it ended up taking a little bit longer than that. But anyway, just gonna stick this in here, let you guys see how it runs. It does have a safety that you can't unlock. You have to push it every time. It works depending on what you're doing. I would imagine it would get the job done. I wouldn't rely on this thing to be long lived, just to put it nicely. But I'm about to take it apart and we'll find out what it looks like, see if it actually would be long lived or not. So start on this side over here. Alright, that's all the screws out of the clamshell. I'm hoping it'll pop open after that. Let's see here. There we go. All the screws stayed in their holes. It's nice. Now they're all about to come out. Let's just dump these. Here we go. And it's actually very not strong. Not at all. Not much rigidity there. It says PA6 glass fiber 30%. Anyway, so normal stuff, but I would imagine the plastic itself is way cheaper, and you can see how they tried to strengthen it with these little lines here. They intersect with these lines on the other half of the clamshell to give it, trying to make it one piece. Doesn't work out too well most of the time, just because these screws get loose, they'll pop out, you drop the tool, little things break, and then the tool just would kind of work itself into pieces. But like I said, I wouldn't rely on it for heavy everyday use, but homeowner that just needs to cut up a couple of pieces of little wood, I'd imagine if you had a good saw blade in there, it would do just fine. Anyway, set that aside. And here we are to the actual meat of the potatoes here. And I don't see how this, man, you can see they ran their little LED wire through there, just like on the rigid one, but I don't see that lasting as long, just personally. Got a little circuit board down here just for the battery. And we got our wires. Alright. And just a little simple switch. Nothing to it all. Real mushy feeling. It is variable speed, so I would imagine this top no, it's just a wiper through here, and it'll send more amperage voltage, through these wires to the motor, depending on how far you pull the trigger. But this whole assembly here is super cheap. Wow. So you can see we got the oh, it's crusty. One, tool-free blade change on here, which it works. Feels pretty stout, honestly. And we just got a little painted housing covering here. And let's see. Yep, little 18-volt motor. Not sure what all that means. Little is that CRS 775 18-volt. I would imagine a very cheap motor, probably in many of the Hyper-Tough tools. Given the size, it would fit in just about anything we made. So you would think they'd use the same motor in every one of their tools. But let's take this little housing apart here and see what's under that. Gonna go with a manual screwdriver for these. Can't get a lot of torque under them, so yeah, they're pretty snug. Alright, let's see what we got. Wow. Let's see. Alright, looks like we're going to have to take off our housing that holds our bearing. You see all of this is just one piece of die cast, not very strong. Also that the screws here, all the screws around the outside are all the same size, just to make it a little bit better on price for them, I would imagine. Alright, and we get to look at our little wiper here, which is just a little piece of felt. Yeah, that's not very good there. Let's see if I can pop that out. Yep, and let's see, this little guy rides through here, and you see it indexes on this pin just in the housing. Other than that, there's nothing that really holds this in place. And I guarantee you, as soon as it starts to get a little bit of slop in this bearing housing here, that guy's going to give way. So they even milled that out to, okay, wow. Got another little shield here. Alright. One little bushing. It's not even a bearing. Very light oil and grease on it, but yep. It has to be offset because this piece here driving the whole mechanism isn't centered, so they have to put in, yeah, they have to counterweight it to be able to make it smooth when you're using the tool. Make sure it's sitting held in. So, got a little sealed bearing on this side. It looks like connects to this center piece here. Let's see what size that is. That size. Alright, got one little set screw. Just runs this. I would imagine holds all that in place. Oh. Little bit of persuasion. Not so much. Gonna screw those threads up though. Alright, see if we can pop it. Actually, if it's staying together that well, see what happens if we run it outside of the. Just set that there. You can see how it's all set, which is what drives this mechanism right there. Yeah. Alright. That was fun. Okay. Alright, so let's see if we can remove our motor off the housing. See how that's put together there. Yep. Manual screwdriver time. Oh wow. They put that together well. They didn't want that to come apart. Whoa. Man, you just take a look at that. That was left off in the, I guess, machining process where they came in and balanced this somewhat. Yep, that guy isn't coming in out of there. See, I would imagine that some of this is press fit. But why wouldn't you have it that way? You know, if you got the machinery there and you can save a couple of, not even a couple, fractions of a penny on a screw, why not do it? Okay, so what we have here, can't get these screws out. I've pretty much wore the heads out just trying every bit I had. This looks to be press fit directly down through the bearing. You can see this small amount of actual shaft that comes through the bearing. And this is my pinky. You can somewhat see how their design works. It's basically two plates, and you have your motor shaft come through, and it's only coming about at best 1/4 of an inch up into the drive mechanism. So you have maybe 1/4 inch gear driving this whole planetary guy. And what that means is as soon as you stall out your action, given that this has enough power, that is, and even if it doesn't, over time would happen, it's going to strip this gear out. It's very, very, very small amount of contact to turn this whole guy and to do what you would ask a Sawzall to do. And not to mention the whole drive assembly is maybe only 1/2 an inch of metal. So yeah, it's a Sawzall, but it probably wouldn't saw everything. I would say, you know, no more than some 2x4s, maybe a 4x4 every now and then. But I wouldn't expect too much life out of this guy. If you really anticipate on using it a lot and you're still buying this, I would get the little extra warranty that they offer, but yeah, other than that, I would expect it to go out. I'd buy it if I had to have one to cut something and I had no other saw or place to get a saw. But short of that, I really don't recommend this, considering you could spend the same amount of money getting a used tool at a pawn shop that would be better than this. But you could spend, maybe $50 more and actually get a nice brand comparatively to this that would stand up behind their warranties and their build quality. And it's what they do. This is, you've got to remember, probably licensed. Walmart has some tool manufacturer making these for them. They're not making hyper tough tools, which is a big reason I wanted to take this apart. I was curious to see how cheaply they were actually able to get one of these made. And if you look, quite simply, that right here is your whole mechanism. This piece, little die cast piece here, you got motor back here and a little shaft. But I mean, even this shaft that drives it is so, it's just cheap steel. It's not. But anyway, now I gotta see if I can get this thing back apart and yeah, see if I'm sure that won't be too tough. And you see, this is the hold down plate to hold that whole guy into shape. That's what keeps that bearing from popping out of there. Now, I couldn't get it to pop out of there, but I'm sure someone could. All you have to do is work it a little bit. I imagine if I went and started chopping some lumber with this, or chopping up little trees or things like that, which you would be expected to do with something like this. I mean, what do you buy a Sawzall for? You got a downed tree in your backyard, it's small, you don't need a chainsaw. Well, people will go buy a Sawzall for that. Perfectly reasonable that, one storm, one homeowner decides he needs to go buy some kind of saw to cut up a tree limb that fell in his backyard, or thinking, oh, I'm going to use this for all of 10 seconds, and why do I need to spend 80? I can spend 40. Well, you're looking at why. It's just not worth it, especially if you plan on keeping it. Now, if you're going to buy it and you're going to return it or something afterwards, which I don't really endorse, but if you're going to do something like that, yeah, okay. I could see going to grab this saw, but other than that, what would be the point? Just go spend you a little bit extra and get something nice. There are deals to be had out there, people. For not a whole lot more than this, you could really actually get much more value. And it really seems to be that this tool here is actually going to be sold to the people that don't know any better. That think, oh, I'll just go grab a Sawzall. It's a Sawzall. What do why do I need to get this nice one? One that costs twice as much, when they all do the same thing. When in reality, they do many things very differently. Alright, see if we can get this guy back in here. This is going to be great. So, I think it was... yeah, so your motor just slips into a housing. Wonder how long that's going to last. Okay. That's how they do it at the factory. Just like that. La-da-da. La-da-da-da. Just routing some wires, you know, just run around a corner. Get them in the crack, the crevices. It's one good thing with cheap tools, actually, that you wouldn't think about, but is very, very noticeable when you take them apart like this, is, well, the cheaper ones are much easier to put back together for some reason. Everything is just a looser fit. They don't plan things out too well, so they have longer wires and less compact and everything like that, because they just, you know, why do all of that? We could just make it cheaper by having longer wires and not having to make sure those wires are the perfect length for the application. They could do it 6 times. They wouldn't be so cheap. But doing it once, here we go. Looks like it's back together to me. Alright. Let me see here. Make sure our little LED gets lined up there. And yeah. Crap. Hey, I actually made it better. Now you don't have a stupid safety in there. Alright. In summary, people, don't buy this saw. Find something cheaper, same price, just anything but this saw. It's not a good one. Like I said, if you got a couple of little limbs to chop up and all you got is $40 and a handsaw, yeah, go buy this instead of using that handsaw. But short of something like that, spend a little extra money and go get something with a name on it that you actually recognize as far as it comes to tools. Battery is craptastic. The trigger really stinks. Charger would take forever to even charge this battery, let alone if you had a larger one, if they even make a larger one. Little foot doesn't adjust. Just don't buy it, people. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all on the next one.